Welcome to Cult and Classic.
Welcome, friends and feeds, to another holiday episode of Cult and Classic Podcast. This is the day we tackle what many have tackled before, but I think we'll have a lot of new insight and new info on the Star Wars Holiday Special. We also watched the full Riff Tracks version of this. Our good friends at rifftracks.com did a comedy track to it, starring Mike Nelson, Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy, and it is phenomenal, and I highly recommend you check it out if you've already seen the Star Wars Holiday Special, or if you think you just might have trouble getting through it unaided. So this film is a real thing that happened and aired once on television in 1978 on November 17th. And the intent was to have a TV special that would bridge the gap in a way between Star Wars A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back was in production. It had not aired yet when this came out. So the intent is that, okay, well, people may forget how much they liked Star Wars A New Hope when The Empire Strikes Back comes out. So let's use this to keep them going, which actually sounds like a solid marketing strategy. I kind of wish some of the contemporary series had done this. However, this was... as our good friend Jeff Tucker said before we started on the air here, it is infamous, and there are a lot of reasons why. So we're going to talk about it and go in deep. But first, I want to introduce our guests. Tad Mastroianni, how are you doing, Tad?
Watch your mouth, kid, or you're going to find yourself floating home.
That's an early one. You could have fallen asleep 15 minutes in and still heard that line. We also have, of course, Jeffrey Tucker. How are you doing, Jeff?
Good, but why?
Because it has to be done. Here's the thing, and I just want to say there's actually a lot of information and backstory about this because it was so widely panned that everyone wanted to weigh in who was involved with the making of this special. So there's a lot of stuff that even Star Wars fans and people who've watched this at parties or just took the plunge and took it on their own to watch this, they probably don't know. So I'm excited to share this info. Also, rounding out our group, last but not least, is Amanda Longley. How are you doing, Mandy?
I'm good. I'm also feeling satisfied that I now know this ridiculousness started before episode 4. Like the whole, not episode 4, I'm sorry. 5. Episode 1? 5? Something?
5
I don't know. Before the Wars of Charter Banks. Whatever they were.
Episode 1, yes. Yes, so people will say the Phantom Menace is where it all started, and I'm honestly going to say that is not the case. I actually think that you can watch episode 1 now and probably find it a pretty solid film overall, aside from the insanity that is Jar Jar Binks. This film, I don't know anyone who sings its praises, and there's good reasons why. And of course, I am your host, Nate Wyckoff, comedian and reviewer for HorrorNews.net. I'm going to give a quick introduction to what there's a framing story in this special, and otherwise it's basically a variety show, which is all the rage in the 70s, and there's just so much to talk about. But the framing story is that there is a holiday on the planet of the Wookiees, which it changes names from this to canon, but it's something like Kashyyyk or Kashyyyk. Depends on what era of Star Wars you're watching. And this planet has a holiday called Life Day. Life Day is... your guess is as good as mine. It's pure madness. There's a tree of life on the planet, and they do some sort of cult worship of it. I don't know. But what happens is that Chewbacca has a family consisting of a wife named Mala, a little kid named Lumpy, and a father named Itchy. Now, we're going to get into those names shortly because it is as insane as you think. And these are all Wookiees. They're in full costume, except they all look like something is woefully wrong with them compared to Chewbacca. Like Chewbacca must be like the Henry Cavill, Brad Pitt, like he must be the most beautiful Wookiee ever if this is standard Wookiee appearance. So he has this family, and they're worried because Chewbacca has never missed a life day. Apparently, Han Solo has taken the Millennium Falcon and whisked Chewbacca back every life day to the planet, and he's late, and so his family is worried. During this time, the Empire is looking for rebels on the planet, and they expect Chewbacca and Han Solo. So there's a framing story that involves them getting to Chewbacca's home so they can celebrate Life Day. Everyone who's a major character, except for Lando, if you consider him a major character, he wasn't in all three of the movies, but they're in it. So Mark Hamill reprises his role as Luke Skywalker, Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, Peter Matthew as Chewbacca, of course, and Peter Mayhew, excuse me, and Anthony Daniels is C-3PO. There is no one in the R2-D2 suit. He is a little machine this go around. And Darth Vader has very brief bits in here, very brief, and he is voiced by James Earl Jones in this. And he's credited as the first time as Darth Vader in this movie. So I actually have a couple of things I like about this, but the entire package is what I think everyone with a brain would call a cinematic train wreck. There are so many little like musical numbers and weird bullshit things crammed in here. We're just going to dive right in, and I'm going to put it to you guys. Tad, I know you're a huge Star Wars fan like I am. You'd seen this before. What was it like this time?
Just keep in mind that I like to consider myself a recovering Star Wars fan because, you know, the whole series kind of derails and inevitably disappoints me. Yes, I watched this years ago, and I'm pretty sure that my mind blocked out a lot of it. This time around, after everything that has happened in the past 20 years, sitting down and watching this and hearing everybody talk about it and rue its existence and debate whether it was canon or not, which it's absolutely not. Let's face it, it never was and never will be canon. No, I'm pretty sure even if George Lucas came out and said it's canon, people would be like, no, it's not, sorry. There was a lot in this that surprisingly, I was like, this isn't actually that bad if there was like 10 minutes cut out of everything. Like, this should not have been 2 hours. I cannot believe that this was 2 hours long. I mean, granted, with commercials, yes, which I think were part of the best. One of the best parts of the Star Wars Holiday Special was watching some good old late 70s commercials.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because the RiffTrax version. So if you go to rifftrax.com, you can purchase this video on demand or streaming copy, and it includes one of the better bootleg transfers of a Star Wars Holiday Special because it has never been released for consumer ownership. It was only aired once. And they included in it the original commercials and riffed those as well. And all I'm going to say about the commercials is this is one of the reasons why I didn't buy into the Mad Men fad, and I didn't even like Mad Men at all, is because the idea that ad men of the 60s were genius is hot garbage, because the 70s commercials, decade later, are horrible. They break every rule of interest whatsoever. It is truly a train wreck. It is just people talking. They actually use the phrase jive at one point in a I believe it was a General Motors commercial. It's just awful. Really terrible stuff. And my mind was blown. Like, I thank the gods for our insane Dolly-esque commercials we have now, no matter how stupid they are and how much I'm like, that has nothing to do with anything. That's not even a joke. I'm like, you know what? It's over. And it will never have to watch a bland white person with this crimpy, crazy updo. Like, I feel bad for, ragging on the 80s feathered hairstyles that women had after watching the late 70s. Because I always enjoyed the early and mid 70s styles, but these late 70s ones, good God. Anyway, we're off track. But if you go, I really recommend you pick up the RiffTrax version of this and enjoy it and enjoy those commercials, because it really wraps the whole thing up. And I was expecting, when I first watched it, Star Wars toys commercials everywhere. There is only one Star Wars Kenner toy commercial in the entire thing, and it's near the end, and it's one of the shortest commercials. Brutal.
Buy Star Wars toys.
Totally, totally brutal. There is a great ad for the remote control robot Tobor, which they have to actually say, like, Tobor, it's robot backwards. Like, I'm like, that's not a selling point. I don't know why you put that in the commercial. Okay, jumped off topic. Jeff, you hadn't seen this before. What was your experience now and your vibe after seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it's actually worse than I expected it to be. Like, even though
Yeah.
I had had some some sort of understanding going in, but like to me it's like the McDonald's plastic Happy Meals toy of the Star Wars universe. It's like it's really like we're going back and like talking about the 1975 run of the Scooby-Doo McDonald's Happy Meals toy. Is like, oh gosh, the build quality on that was fucking terrible. It's just like it really is. This thing clearly they're like, okay, well, like you said, let's get some excitement back and make a little money off this, but let's not put any money in, no thought into it at all. Let's just give a couple people some kind of skits to run and some like weird song interlude. I don't know, it just was like, it's just so fucking terrible.
So what's shocking to me is that, as you said, no budget. I couldn't find the numbers really, any credible numbers, I should say. There were guesses all over the place, but of what this actually cost, it must have cost a pretty penny, because they have tons of guest stars. I mean, the entire thing.
That is true.
It's a variety show, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Art James is in there. Alec Guinness is, of course, in a flashback as Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's not really in it. Jefferson Starship is one of the musical numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, DIAHANN CARROLL, of course, super famous, one of the earliest glam icons and stars who happen to be Black of television. ART CARNEY, BEA ARTHUR. I mean, it is a weird.
So maybe the app thing is they spent their money on the wrong things, because it was like shot in like a sitcom. Like the bulk of it was essentially like a sitcom set, essentially, right? Like
exactly like
a single angle like room, and they basically do most of their storytelling in that one little spot.
It's mostly talking heads. There's establishing shot of because it takes place in Chewbacca's family's treehouse, which actually looks like an awesome like Art Deco pad. Like, I don't know, I think it's just a set, but it actually is pretty swinging. I want to unpack some of what you said, but let's first go to Mandy. Mandy, you hadn't seen this before, I think you said. What is your feeling towards it now that you have finished it in its entirety?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I really want to research the Labor Law Reform Act of 1978 and really understand why there were so many union ads at that time.
Yes. Every single ad, almost like every single commercial break pretty much starts with a lengthy ad by General Motors or some affiliate of the union talking about interviewing quote unquote real people. Maybe they were real people, but maybe they should have got some actors, because they are not engaging at all. And I don't understand, like, I just don't know the history of what was happening. And I know we keep talking about the commercials, but we're kind of.
I was gonna say, but you were probably asking me about the movie, and I honestly just don't really have anything to say about it that you haven't already said. It was.
I think you will.
It was so horrible. Actually, I caught myself thinking many, many times while watching this how thankful I was that you gave us the riff tracks, because I would not have made it through like just the regular, like straight up
I was thinking
Christmas
the
special.
same thing, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Wouldn't have happened.
Here's a good example of why it's so hard to watch. Is George Lucas insisted, he refused to budge on the idea that Chewbacca's family be the primary members of the film and not speak English. They speak Wookiee, which are edited and warped recordings of bears, real life bears. That is what the sounds are in this case. It's not Peter Mayhew doing, you know, like his shtick. It's actually bears. So you have essentially, except for a very short beginning scene with Chewbacca and Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon, you have about 15 minutes solid of, or at least I'm pretty sure it's around 15 minutes of just Wookiees talking to each other, going about their business. And this is where we're going to talk first about the utter terror that is Chewbacca's dad, Itchy. He is a nightmare. He literally, that costume would have been brilliant in a Bigfoot film, like a true horror film based around Bigfoot, because he's missing teeth, his gums are like red and inflamed. His has this like jutting underbite with this lower jaw lip that literally protrudes about 2 inches above his top lip, so it like covers the tip of his nose. He's all shaggy, and then the worst part is that they gave him like a patchy, hairless pink underbelly that the others don't have, like an aged dog who's losing hair. It is the most unsettling, upsetting costume to have in this. And he spends most of the film like shrieking and roaring at little Lumpy, who runs terrified, I can only assume, off camera. I mean, he is really unsettling. Did anybody else?
This is my point about the budget, though. Like this, I'm pretty sure they just used Chewbacca's costume. They had it in the closet somewhere. They took it out. It looks great. Like every other character, like it looks like something that was just thrown together from the shag carpet store. You know, you just get like a couple nice shag carpets, throw them on somebody's back, and those are the costumes.
You know,
that
I'm
come
going to
out.
argue, I actually think that somebody put a great deal of effort, maybe
Really?
even more than Chewbacca, in the mouths, particularly because the lips, like Lumpy, when he like sneers and tries to look scary to the stormtroopers later in the film, like he bares his teeth and you see like the wet pink lips, like it looks like an animal, just a very unsettling primate. Like there's a true internal like panic that must come from like our ancestral memory from seeing them mug their way through this film. Like Mala, they gave her like these like Riff jokes that like the lips from why am I blanking on her name, Angelina Jolie. She has like this sort of very feminine curl to her lips, like a permanent smile. Lumpy is flat out terrifying and disturbing and looks like drool is just piling down his face. And then little Lumpy, he has a super round like Charlie Brown head. And in that case, I do wonder what they used to base that, because like he looks like a deranged teddy bear. Like if Ginger Dead Man, the puppet, was to actual gingerbread man cookies, that's sort of what Lumpy is to teddy bears. Like the blown up, distended, freaky pinched face, expressionless eye, very, very weird. And of course they are like Chewbacca's costume in that you can, on the rare occasions when they look up, because usually they have kind of a forehead ridge, you can see their human eyes, and it does not add any humanity to the whole proceeding.
So you're saying the Itchy toys probably didn't sell very well?
So I had to look, because I'm like, because you know that George Lucas had quite a bit of hand in this, although we'll talk about his vibe from it afterward, like what he did in the wake of this. But their actual names are long names. Like these are just supposed to be shortened versions of their names, which makes a little more sense. Mala is supposed to be short for Malatobuk, and Lumpy is short for Lumpawarum, and Itchy is short for Attachikhook. Now, I mean, I don't know if that's any better. It's another one of those cases where George Lucas created so much backstory that never made it to any sort of film or canon. And while in many cases, like with his original trilogy, I think it works very well, because it seems like it makes the world building effective, because things happen regardless of our complete understanding of them and eventually reveal themselves to the audience. In this case, it's just gobbledygook. There's no intelligible reason for this madness. Now, as I said, this is a variety show, so that was very popular. So what happens is there's a framing story, and then they find creative ways to interject little skits or various things in this, and there were a lot of them in it. Like I said, Jefferson Starship has a little animated like music video where that was fairly straightforward. They're one of the Imperial troopers who stops by the Chewbacca home to look for rebel scum is entranced by what looks kind of like a suitcase that opens up and has like a little holographic video in it. I mean, it's cute. Like, okay, everyone would be moderately entertained for a second, but their video is basically just purple, like animated light blur, like over the top of the film cells. So like they do with a lightsaber. But essentially what happens, I don't know if anybody else noticed, it literally looks like the lead singer of Jefferson Starship is just singing into a glowing pink dildo for the entire segment. It's really, really unsettling because the glow makes it look just like a rounded pink fuzzy shape that he's holding into his mouth because it goes beyond the actual microphone shape. It's just a weird, like, it's just not very effective. The first mini segment we get is, it's sort of like a Cirque du Soleil green screen where, you know how in the original Star Wars trilogy at one point on the Millennium Falcon, they're playing the animated claymation, stop motion animation chess-like game, which is great. Everybody loves that moment. You watch the little figures kill each other. It's the same sort of concept on this. There's like a table and Itchy sets it up for Lumpy so he stops bugging him, I guess. And he's like, and it is, they make fun of it for being super homosexual appearing, but it is incredibly odd. And everyone is wearing, of course, this skin tight acrobatic bodysuits. And then several characters do these weird like duet moves where they go crotch to face and go end over end again and again. And I mean, I don't know, like, I just don't understand why that was deemed a worthy use of time, because it's not very entertaining. And like instead of monsters, they give us, you know, like off Broadway, you know, Cirque du Soleil knockoff, you know, Central Michigan. Like, it's just not very good. That's the first one we get, and it goes on for several minutes. Then, what's the next one we get? Oh, it's the cooking segment, I believe.
Which was actually pretty awesome.
Was it?
I thought so.
Was
it was
it?
far more okay. So it was far more entertaining than a previous segment. Where, as far as I was concerned, it was like an extended version of that scene in The Big Lebowski where the guy's landlord is doing a stage show by himself. Except there were like 15 of him. That's what that felt like to me.
So this is comedy legend Harvey Corman. He plays several characters in this. He plays Chef Gourmanda, and Chef Gourmanda is on the television. I will give it to, they had a Star Trek moment in this, which is in that the Chewbacca household has flat screen TVs. They're clearly like they're LEDs. Like, there's no question about it long before that. But on this TV in the kitchen, this chef is showing how to prepare bantha. And there's no cooking involved, apparently. They just throw it in a pot with some like juice and spices and just jab at it a lot. And the big joke in this chef moment is that like minutes into it is revealed that this character, who is of course Harvey Corman in drag, has like multiple arms. So at one point he needs more arms, and another arm comes out of his side, and then another one comes out, and it's just the classic, you know, another person is behind him with his arms through his, like, underneath his armpits. I mean, it could be effective. I saw it and I was like, oh, this was the joke that they spent 5 minutes getting to for this segment. It reminded me, there was an extra in one of the PlayStation 2 era Mortal Kombat games called, which I think they brought back, called Cooking with Scorpion. And it was just a guy cosplaying as the character Scorpion, mutilating thawed chicken before throwing it in the oven. And it reminded me of that. Like, it's the whole, oh, look, we're gonna make fun of cooking segments. But again, it was so bizarre because they don't put it in an oven or over a fire or anything. They just throw it in the pot and then they're like, and you're done. And I'm like, whoa.
You're gonna split hairs when we're talking about the Star Wars Holiday Special, where nothing fucking makes sense anyway. At least this segment had great monologue. Great.
I disagree. I was not engaged, but I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Oh my god.
I mean, I think maybe back to what Tad was saying earlier. Maybe if it was just like a 1 minute or like 30-second segment, we could all like, oh, okay, that's funny for like, you know. But like, you dragged me along for that long. I don't care anymore.
Well, and the physical comedy could have been more clever, right? Like, what if one of the forearms come out earlier and then one of them starts to like sneak something and he slaps it? You know, like it's his own hand. That's funny, right? Like it becomes like a Doc Ock moment.
There should have been more beats. Like,
instead of the one. Yeah. No, and I mean, Harvey Corman is a great actor, so he does what he can, but it feels like everything is in many of these segments, like this one, it feels like it's just ad-lib, but there was no content there. So I don't know. But after that, I think we go to we go to a new location. We go to a store. Art Carney plays a big role in this as San Dan, I guess, who actually was originally, I think, going to play like a Boba Fett role, if I remember correctly, in the lore, that character name, but was repurposed for this. And he's like a rebel sympathizing friend of the Chewbacca family who's like a salesman. And we see him essentially getting shaken down by an Imperial officer. And that kind of sets up who he is. And then he shows up and is sort of the person who speaks English in the household for the audience as he hangs out with the Wookiees. Again, he's a great character actor. He's just not given a whole lot to do. I mean, he has to just essentially carry the plot along, and it's a lot to ask of him. I mean, even Princess, so they have like a little, like behind a picture, they have like a little video monitor, which I assume is like their clandestine way to touch base with Luke and the rest of the rebellion. And like, that's where Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker with R2-D2 shows up at one point on the screen. And then Leia with C-3PO shows up and they talk through that. And even in that, Leia has C-3PO, who is a translator droid. She's like, do you have anybody else there? And they're like, yeah, this guy. And they're like, can you put him on, the guy that speaks English that I can understand? I don't know why they were just like, no subtitles. Because at this point, give us subtitles for God's sake. Because I can't understand, like, I don't want to listen to the shrieking groaning for 2 hours. But we do. So I mentioned Luke Skywalker here. It is off. Was anybody else right away like totally like confused when he came on screen? Because his makeup, he's got cake makeup on and eyeliner. It's like he's letting that bake before doing contouring. Like, it is hardcore.
I was like, they caught him getting ready for his drag show.
They did the exact same makeup on him as they did on Leia. It's like they had it on a towel and then they just put it over their face and pulled it off. There is actually a reason for this. Right before this, Mark Hamill got in a super bad car accident. He almost died, and he was pretty banged up. So they essentially were like, well, we have to keep pancaking makeup on to make this less noticeable. I think at that point, man, make him banged up and say that there was a problem. There was an explosion or something, because the makeup's really unsettling. It doesn't even look like him.
It's easy to write that stuff off when it's like he gets into friggin' space fights all the time. Something blows up in space, whatever.
Well, in the scene he's in,
you don't want to scare the kiddies, man. It's a holiday special.
Wait a minute. We're talking about Star Wars.
Like, really heavy eyeliner on him and stuff. It's like, that doesn't really get explained by the pancake makeup. Like, there's like, we're just gonna go full face.
I don't know what they were doing. I really don't. But again, maybe they were fake lashes. Maybe he lost them. I really don't know. It's real. I would find it more upsetting than some bruises and stitches. I don't know exactly what the extent of it was, but it would have made sense too to me, because in his scene, he is trying to fix some sort of propulsion engine or something in like a workshop with R2-D2. And so like, it would have made sense that there was an explosion, because like the whole joke is in that one, which again, it just doesn't play off very well, is R2-D2 keeps trying to tell him that something's wrong and smoking behind him. And he keeps being like, hold on, this is really important, R2-D2. And then, of course, he realizes he turns around and he's like, you were supposed to be watching this. You're like, I get the joke. But they do it twice. Like, it just happened. Like, you can't just do a joke twice in a row and expect any payoff the second time around. It doesn't make sense. But he's in this. And then Leia's role is even weirder and smaller at first because she does a video. And like I said, she just sort of seems mildly irritated that she can't understand the Wookiees, even though C-3PO is translating for her right next to her. And then she shows up at the very end when they're at the Tree of Life ceremony for Life Day, and she sings a song. Now, apparently, according to Carrie Fisher, who we miss dearly, God, infinity rest her soul, she said, I'm only going to do this if I can sing. And actually, it makes sense because I didn't know this until this moment, but she actually has quite a nice voice. She can sing. She's clearly trained. She did say, though, that she absolutely hated the song that they chose for her to sing, and that they were basically like, it's not going to change. This is what we have. That brings us to the music in this. There are 3 musical numbers. No, 4. There's 4 musical numbers, and they are downers. They are so down and depressing. I mean, Jefferson Starship kind of tries to get it up, but it sort of just comes out as like pseudo adult contemporary before adult contemporary. And it's like the lyrics are like, will you light this sky on fire? It's just depressing. Like nothing felt like it was written for this special. Nothing feels Star Wars about these. The song that Leia sings at the end is a really drawn out, weird ballad. Like it was cut from like the first script draft of Sound of Music. And then they were like, oh, this isn't gonna fly. And they fired the composer. Like it reads like that. And then the most insane, I'm gonna say this is the most insane moment, not only in this special, not only in Star Wars history, but in any primetime aired special, is DIAHANN CARROLL doing what is supposed to appear to be like an arousing porn video experience for Itchy while he's sitting in the living room. So what happens is when Art Carney comes in, you know, as the goods dealer, he's got gifts for everyone, and he sets up Itchy in I think they call it the mind diffuser or something like that. It's some sort of mind muddling. Like it's not a positive term. Like it's got some weird name, and it's like a VR chair, you know, you sit down and strap in kind of thing, or a hair dryer. And they sit him in, and he's like, this is, it's just really going to get you going. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty much like, he says something like that. Like, it's clearly supposed to be sexual. And then it's this complete, pardon the term, mind fuck of, like, kaleidoscope vision with DIAHANN CARROLL in, like, this outfit or some sort of dancers that are, like, duplicated on the screen. They look like loogies or raw oysters or sperm or like eggs and egg drop soup, like backpedaling across a floor that they've green screened, like back and forth. And then we get like varying close-ups of DIAHANN CARROLL while she's singing. Now, I will say this, DIAHANN CARROLL's very beautiful, and I thought her outfit was actually really cool. It's like sort of a fishish water, like there's no hair for her. It's got this headpiece that's like sort of fabric or jewels hanging. It's very Drag Race. Like it's very cool outfit. I liked it a lot. But she sings this song. It's like the main lyric or message is like, let this minute last forever. And that thing feels like 30 minutes straight. I don't know. I didn't time it. It's probably closer to like 8, but that is a long ass song.
It's very meta.
It is, because it feels like it's 1,000 years, and it is brutal. And the idea and we get weird cuts to Itchy's face as he like spasms, and it just feels dirty and erotic in a weird way. Like what she's doing is not, she's sexy. What she's doing is not sexual. And so to have it play this way is so weird. And I guess writer and producer, Mitzi, I forget her name, but in my notes here, apparently she said, Mitzi Welsh, she said the Diahann Carroll segment was intended to be, quote, softcore porn that would pass the censors. Now, it's clear in the script that's kind of what it's supposed to be, but what in God's name? Like, there are sexier commercials in between this than anything else. Like, it was just the weirdest, like, is this music to kill yourself to? I thought it was a euthanasia chair when I first watched it, because it was the only explanation for that performance.
But why?
I don't know. And that's it.
That's the thing. But why? Did anyone ask her why they even felt this segment was like let's stick this in a Star Wars special. Why not?
So the other thing is that there's only one credited director on this program, Steve Binder. Steve Binder, he was famous essentially for doing musical television shows and variety shows. I mean, he did a documentary on Elvis. He did like Aladdin on Ice, Beating the Beast on Ice in the 90s. He did Ringling Brothers stuff. Barry Manilow worked with him, the Beach Boy, like all these big, the Steve Allen Comedy Hour way back in the 60s. He did all these big productions that are kind of like this, so I see why they brought him on. But he actually wasn't the only director. He was the second director, because David Akumba started this and filmed several segments. Now, David Akumba did music as well. Hank Williams did a special that David Akumba directed, but he also did some other films. Like he did 73's Slipstream. He did Nightlife in 1989, which was kind of an interesting movie. So he did a lot more traditional film, and I guess we only have his take on it, but was fed up with the production early on and left. But this was one of the segments that he directed. Now, he directed this segment, and he directed, he didn't direct this one. He did Jefferson Starship, which again was much closer to a straight up regular video, and the BEA ARTHUR section, which we will also get to. But I will say, I think those in general were of a better quality than Steve Binder's content, because it felt like something I would see in a variety show. I don't think, we'll talk about the BEA ARTHUR one in a minute, but I think it was a little better executed. The thing he did do, which I absolutely adored, is he commissioned the animated segment that comes almost halfway through the movie. Now, let's talk about this animated segment, because we recently did also in another holiday special, A Cosmic Christmas by Nelvana, the Canadian animation group. Well, Nelvana after A Cosmic Christmas, but pretty close, because that was 77, did this animated short, which did make its way onto, I believe, the Blu-ray set for the Star Wars Complete Saga as an Easter egg. So this is the only part of this special that was ever officially released by LucasArts or Disney. This animated special is cool to me. If you like weird 70s Ralph Bakshi, Don Bluth, sort of rough but different animation, or 70s issues of heavy metal where you get a lot of European influence in the artwork, you'll probably like this, because it's the first appearance of Boba Fett. It's a little vignette where the Millennium Falcon crashes on this planet. Chewbacca seems to be acting erratically and has Han Solo tied up. And so R2-D2, C-3PO, and Luke Skywalker land on this planet and try to figure out what's going on and rescue them. And they run into Boba Fett, who's like, I'll help you. Blah. And there's cool creatures in this. There's really weird aliens. The animation is super keep on trucking. And to me, it felt like the Boba Fett character from the little bit we see him in Empire Strikes Back. I mean, it felt like him. He's a cunning, calculating bounty hunter who, of course, turns on the group. Although the plotting is not particularly solid, because what his entire purpose was there made no sense. He could have captured all of them quite easily while they were, being affected by this sleeping disease, which is what has happened to Chewbacca and Han Solo. So it doesn't make much sense, but it also doesn't matter. This I would have loved to see as a feature film. Also, people will recognize that the Droids animated series and the Ewok animated series that followed a few years later were also produced by Nelvana. So this presumably is what got them that. You can kind of see the style in those, but again, this was clearly a little higher budget, more conceptual. They were allowed to be a little crazier with this one than the other more traditional animated series episodes of the Ewok and Droid specials. So that's my take. Tad, did you or did any of you guys have any feeling when the animated special part came on?
Yeah, I mean, this is this kind of shows even me, you know, who's been a fan of Star Wars for a long time. It's also before my time. You know, there are people who were watching it before I was born. It shows you kind of how, not only how Star Wars has evolved, but what it originally kind of intended to be. And this whole holiday special kind of is you never were supposed to take Star Wars too seriously. Star Wars has been around for so long and had so much creative dissonance and conflicting visions that you end up with sometimes sometimes you're really never sure what the hell the point is supposed to be. Like, you watch this and you go, this is what Star Wars might have ended up being. It may never have gotten its empire that, you know, made it into a serious property that really like allowed the ball to get rolling. This could have been just like, you know, something quaint out of the 70s and 80s, like a lot of stuff like Jim Henson was putting out at the time, where it kind of just was a single one-off thing and it never took off because nobody intended it to. And it's one of those things, like, it shows how much Lucas did not plan shit out ahead of time. And the moment that he handed it off to someone else, surprise, kids, there are still creative vision problems with Star Wars to this day, because someone will hand it off and no one knows what the fuck to do with it because they just don't have the vision to execute it. And this animated series, like, I remember watching it when I was a kid and going, why don't they make more of these? Because the voice work was fantastic. The animation was really cool. I saw Luke pilot a Y-Wing for the once and only time ever. And it kind of
also the Y-Wing can separate.
Yes,
I didn't know it has like the cockpit can separate and act on its own. That was a neat little touch, because they clearly did get the schematics, you know, the animation sheets or the prop sheets for everything, because they got what existed in the universe already. They got it right, you know, between the Millennium Falcon and the Y-Wing and all that stuff. We didn't see Boba Fett's ship at this point. Boba Fett's costume is a little different. It's pretty close, but he has this spooky eye symbol in the center of his forehead.
So it was so weird.
Yeah, it was cool. It was interesting, but yeah, it was definitely. It was just, and there were neat touches in it. There's this moment early on where, when Luke and the droids land, they get attacked by this giant sort of, I don't know what you would call it. It's like a sea monster dinosaur, and it starts eating the ship. And then a couple of laser blasts go off, and Boba Fett's riding something similar, this giant thing. And it starts sniffing around the ship, and he's like, it's looking for food. I'm like, well, we don't have much, but he can have it. And Luke hands him, presumably, their only food source, and the creature eats it. And Boba Fett doesn't stop him or anything. He just says this line that's like, it's foolish to give your only food to a dumb, you know, to a dumb life form. Like, you know, you're wasting it on it. And it's just like, but it just told you so much about that character right away. And I was like, wow, this is more characterization for Boba Fett that we've since been built on by all of the extra canon material and now the Mandalorian, that is really interesting. I just like that kind of thing. It was good storytelling. And it was neat to see that in the middle of this otherwise insane garbage. I want to move on now to the BEA ARTHUR bit. BEA ARTHUR, of course, amazing actress. Dorothy Spornak from Golden Girls, a comedy icon.
Who's the dude in that scene? There's I
didn't recognize, but I'm sure he's well known. His name is. It's a funky sort of alien name that she keeps saying incorrectly. So it will come to me at some point. I'll dig through. But so it's in the cantina on Mos Eisley, right? And it's literally the cantina where Greedo gets shot. But it's before Greedo gets shot. This is where the timing doesn't quite make sense, because Greedo is there, right? He's in the audience, isn't he?
Another.
I think
True.
so.
It
looked like it honestly looked like they, and again, I'm going to keep harping on it. It looks like a lot of the same creatures.
So they literally
because they had the costumes already.
They did. They repainted them.
Yeah.
They repainted them for this, and they reused them all, including the band and everything. There's one addition, which is a big white rat, which was actually made for 78's Food of the Gods, I believe, and they reused it. And 76's Food of the Gods, excuse me, and they reused it and actually added it to the Star Wars universe canon. So it is a Tintin dwarf in the Star Wars universe, but it's actually a prop from Food of the Gods. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, these are the actual costumes that were worn in the film, and they repainted them. So I don't think they repainted them particularly differently, but it was kind of cool because I feel like a lot of us who have seen this in the past or heard about it, it's so bad. But for those of us who, like Tad said, part of the love was seeing all this insane content and world building and little bits and pieces that we just wanted more of. We get more footage of them in this than exists anywhere else out of, after A New Hope. And it was neat to see them. BEA ARTHUR, of course, can act her way through anything. And in her bit, she is the maitre d' and the bartender. And she has like this guy who's fallen in love with her, this alien who has a giant hole in the top of his head and drinks through it. Very odd moment, but he brings her a flower and she keeps trying to brush him off. And then after he's essentially assaulted her, it's supposed to be in good fun, but he goes behind the bar and like grabs her around the waist. Like, it's just very uncomfortable in our day and age, although she doesn't seem particularly bothered by it. It's the kind of thing that if you saw at a restaurant, you would hope you're the kind of person who'd be like, hey, she said no, buzz off, scumbag. Like that sort of moment. But it's sort of played for laughs. And then over their TV, because I guess they have a TV in there, because they didn't before, but they have a TV, and the Empire is like, all bars must close down now. Like they're trying to stop, rebels from running material, I assume. But the same thing that's happening on Kushuk is happening on Mos Eisley. And so they have to shut down. So she's trying to get everyone out. And she sings the Star Wars equivalent of closing time and tries to get everyone out. And she comps a bunch of drinks. And of course she's BEA ARTHUR. She can't sing, of course. That's not her thing. So she does this sort of talk song thing. It goes on too long, but I would hazard to say I found this one of the more successful ones, because at least we got a bunch of aliens. We got the cantina. It has the classic cantina music. And I understood what they were trying to do. It's sort of a little goof on this guy who's in love with her. And it was kind of, the idea, if not the execution, was fun to see the people that are working at the cantina that we've only ever seen because it doesn't really look like a hive of scum and depravity in this. It's kind of more like a Norm's, or a Denny's. I don't know. What were your guys' take on this segment? Because it's one of the bigger segments.
So
very Cheers. Like the way she's talking to them was like the regular crowd that's there all the time that she has like clear, like established relationships with their personalities.
Like the older woman at a biker bar,
Yeah.
It's her bar.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, this is must be like late at night, because the crowd in this bar during the scenes in the Star Wars film were very ornery. They're very unpleasant. This was a very jolly crowd. Just somebody walking in, doesn't just instantly start a fight, which didn't. Luke walks in.
This is the post-gentrification Mos Eisley Cantina.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's like apparently on Tatooine it's like the reverse. Mos Eisley Cantina during the day is like Waffle House, but at night it's like Denny's.
I don't understand the reference, but sure.
So Jeffrey's never been to a Waffle House, I think.
No.
Waffle House at 2 to 4 a.m. 2 to 4 a.m. Waffle House is a lot like Mos Eisley.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I just know they don't close for any kind of weather. It's like a whole thing, right?
Sandstorms, whatever, we're open.
That is the end of my knowledge on a Waffle House.
Well, I think Mos Eisley.
You never been to a Waffle House?
No.
This is a
why
good
would we
time.
ever why would we ever go to a Waffle House?
Yeah, this is a good time to mention that Jeffrey Tucker and Amanda Longley are East Coast dwellers for the most part, although Jeff and Mandy have both been elsewhere. But there are not that many Waffle Houses on the East Coast, whereas
There's
where
been a
I
few
am in
places.
California.
I'm not I mean, I lived in Seattle for a long time. I'm not
Yeah.
aware of any in that area.
You
I used to travel down south, like in Georgia, and
yeah.
I'd see them there, but I did not
What is on
stop.
the East Coast?
Roscoe's, baby. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
so this is sad. It's making me hungry, and I don't have
Terrible. We're gonna get all kinds of negative comments about being like Waffle House snobs or something.
Yeah, it's just Jeff and Mandy. Okay,
It's just
I'm
us.
free of this. No, so most likely, so it was neat to see. But again, it's just a long bit. I mean, this is a really long bit, and her song is a downer. It's about closing down, and at the end, the bouncer is crying. Like you're just like, where's the holiday cheer, man? Like I don't know who approved this. So this gets done. A stormtrooper gets thrown off the railing of Chewbacca's house when Han Solo and Chewbacca get there. They did have a moment. I actually think that the Imperial troops in this movie are probably the most Star Wars thing about it, because they are essentially Nazi stormtroopers. You know, they come into the house to search. They needlessly break and trash little kid Lumpy's room and make him cry. I mean, it's just, they're just nasty. And I kind of like the touch that, so he gets thrown over the railing or falls over the railing, and Han Solo sees his gun and he picks it up and chucks it over the railing too. And then shortly thereafter, I think Han Solo's gone by this point. A big Imperial alert comes over their TV thing and says, like, there's a stormtrooper stationed at your location that hasn't checked in. Like, what, you know, please respond and check in or whatever. And Art Carney's character puts in his ID, and it's like, you know, peddler, whatever, what is the situation? And he's like, yeah, that guy robbed me and took a bunch of food and headed for the hills. And the Imperial soldier's response isn't like, you're lying. He's just like, thank you, we will seek to track him down, which is, I'm sorry, that seems to be how actual military forces under dictatorships operate. If North Korea is anything to go by, defectors defect because they have horrible conditions, and sometimes it causes terrible things, you know, to their families. But that just seemed like such a weirdly real moment in such an insane production. I mean, also though, like, I don't know much about this planet. Maybe there is no ground underneath them. Maybe it's just like a swamp, but you'd think they'd wanted to address through dialogue or something what they're going to do with the dead body that's sitting underneath their treehouse, which is not. That would have been another 30-minute song. You know, that's Jefferson Starship's cut segment.
Oh. See, Nate, that just reminds me of when we used to play Shadowrun, and my character would just leave the bodies wherever we shot them in his own backyard. Yeah,
I'd forgotten that moment, but there were a lot of fun things that.
Yeah.
God bless role playing.
I missed my rooftop.
So inside jokes galore. Maybe we'll do a Shadowrun. Maybe we'll do a Twitch stream at some point. So I guess the things that I liked about this movie were the animated segment. I loved all around. I mean, problems withstanding, I loved it. I wish the entire thing was just an animated story in the Star Wars universe. I love the idea now of maybe Disney getting sort of an animatrix vibe on, where they have just commission a bunch of different animation houses or indie artists to do segments in the Star Wars universe. That would be really neat. And I think it could come up with some really cool stuff. Of course, Star Wars has always, Lucasfilm and hopefully Disney, but I'm not sure. I don't know about the future of the fan film in the Star Wars universe, because Star Wars has always been very supportive of their fan communities creating new content. And Disney is not traditionally on board with that at all. So we will see how that goes. But no, I enjoyed that. I liked seeing the aliens in the Mos Eisley Cantina. I am going to sickly say I kind of enjoyed Itchy's design just because it's so repulsive. Like I said, I wish it was in a horror movie because it's really unsettling. It would have made a great 70s, you know, Bogey Creek 5. I guess 70s is too early for that. It would have made a nice side film to the Bogey Creek series. All right. I think we're at the moment where we start to get to recommendations, but I kind of want to do this first and go around the horn and say what we liked or appreciated about this this film, because it's very easy to pick apart because it's a true mashup. And part of the history that I didn't get to that I mentioned earlier with George Lucas is that he hated this. When he saw the final product, because he greenlit it and had all sorts of notes, like you can't, have Wookiees talk anything other than Wookiee sounds, all these things. He hated it. And after the airing, he literally tried to buy every master tape from stations and everywhere to try and squelch it. And he claimed that he did, but of course we know that he did not, because there are many bootlegs that are not just from private tape machines. There are apparently masters floating around. So he didn't, but he tried, and I'm sure that expense was large. The other thing is, just take a listen. We talked about the directors, the writers on this. I mean, they're not nobodies. They're really big writers. So the fact that it came out so unfunny and so weird is shocking. The Rod Warren was a head writer. He wrote for Lily Tomlin's shows for, all of her 70s career. Did so many other things. Wrote for tons of television show specials as well as award ceremonies. Did the lots of stuff for the Academy Awards, the Primetime Academy Awards, all these things that often have good comedic writing. Then you have comedy icon Bruce Vilanch was a writer on this. Bruce Vilanch, of course, our drag fans will recognize him as a guest judge on Drag Race, but also I don't even know what to say. Like, Bruce Vilanch has written for every award show ever in the United States, and probably some elsewhere, and the Tony Awards and the People's Choice Awards, and God knows so many places. Bruce Vilanch has since said that he was doing a lot of cocaine while they were working on this project, so maybe that has something to do with it. I'm sure him and Carrie Fisher had some stories. Pat Proft
wasn't lit up the whole time.
Yeah, right. Pat Proft also was a writer. Pat Proft wrote Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2. Also wrote some of the Scary Movie films, Naked Gun. A big comedy writer. Wrote for Mary Tyler Moore's second show, the Mary Tyler Moore Hour. I believe that was her second show. And then you have Leonard Rips. Leonard Rips wrote Frankenweenie, the original screenplay, the 1984 one, which they used when Disney made Frankenweenie 2012, and wrote for the Pain TV series, wrote a lot of episodes of Full House, also wrote for the Rodney Dangerfield show, which I don't know if anybody, the special, I don't know if anybody's ever seen that, but it's a fun time. And then, of course, we mentioned Mitzi Welsh. Mitzi Welsh was a music department employee who also wrote a lot, worked with Carol Burnett and Whoopi Goldberg, Dolly Parton. So it's really mind-boggling how so many people who have pedigree and clearly talent, because they have long careers, could do something so abysmal. And I can only imagine that there was just a ton of hands in the pot, poking back, pushing back. George Lucas, I'm sure, had ideas that just they fought against. I don't know what the case was, though, because no one has come out and said, it must have been a million little things, because no one's come out and said, this is what happened. Everyone is just like, well, it was a terrible this, or this was real bad. I'm like, everything is real bad, pretty much. So let's talk about what we like. Tad, what did you like about the Star Wars Holiday Special 1978?
There were enough segments that were done well enough. Like that opening scene with Chewie and Han felt like one of the movies. Like the Millennium Falcon looked proper. They were acting, Harrison Ford, acted as typical Han Solo, which for him is natural. It just felt great. The animated segment was great. Even some of the little interlude bits where some of the original cast were there and filling it up, nothing particularly happened, but they were there. It was kind of, it feels normal almost in all the insanity. It's like just seeing 2 or 3 of the original cast just there and just acting themselves. you know, it kind of grounded it. And then that cantina scene, I loved the giant rat. I have to reiterate, I thought it was a great model. It looked adorable. It moved great. BEA ARTHUR and her basically her reprising her bit role from History of the World, because I swear they basically dressed her and even put the same damn wig on her head. And I also really appreciate that Carrie Fisher went all out and made sure that she also didn't wear a bra for this reprisal of her role as well.
And I tell you, it's got to be the time, because the commercials, no one was wearing them either. It's just it's odd. And I'm going to shout this out because it made me think of it again. There was one commercial where they did something that they just wouldn't, I don't think, do on normal network TV now, which is, of course, there were several commercials for women's hose, the pantyhose. And at one point, a woman stretches it and then turns it to show the inside of the crotch, where it's aerated, so your crotch isn't, it's just sweat like all men's underwear ever is. And just the shot of essentially thin netting for where a woman's vagina is was something that they wouldn't do now. I guarantee you. Yeah, I guarantee you they would not do it now. And it was sort of crazy to see something from '78 that they wouldn't put on TV now, even though it's just a garment. It's not even, they're not even wearing it. It's just a garment that she opened from the package. Anyway, and I will say too, Tad, I do kind of like the thing that you raised, where we really do see these characters. It's sort of like fan fiction in a weird way. We see them just doing normal things, and it makes you think like, wow, I never thought that there was downtime between the films. It just, you feel like it goes boom, boom, like everyone's just essentially running from scene to scene, and this is not the case here.
Well,
they're just kind of hanging out.
It was one of the things when you grew up with the novels, even the bad novels, there was downtime in there, and you got to they had the chance to kind of humanize some of the characters. Like one of the books in particular, Han and Luke were like undercover on a planet, and they were having a discussion about whether you could use a lightsaber to shave your beard. And Luke was like, I suppose it's possible if you were really careful. And it was just so out of place. But at the same time, it's like these are supposed to be normal people in their universe. So yes, they would have these awkward downtime moments together.
It's very strange and very strange.
Yes.
And of course, if anyone is interested and has never dove in, there are a wealth of novels and comic books and things which are considered non-canon. The other thing I want to mention too is we're talking about canon, as I'm talking about canon, because yes, I just brought it up. Star Wars Special, while it's not canon, many parts of it have been incorporated into apparently official Lucasfilm canon, which is up to Disney to take or not. But apparently, Chewbacca's family members are canon, and let's see what else. As I said, the rat from The Food of the Gods, 1976, is canon. So there are little things in there, and I think that they have said or insinuated, at least with its inclusion, that the animated section from this is canon, which is interesting because it kind of explains why they knew Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back a little bit, or at least knew of him. So it's interesting. Jeff, what did you like about this film?
Gosh, there's a Whirlpool ad where a eagle comes down and catches a fish. I mean, watching an eagle hunt is an amazing thing. I mean, if I could go out my door and watch that, I'd watch it for hours. So that was entertaining.
That was the first and only time I'd ever heard the term slipshod in a commercial, and they jammed it right in there. They absolutely knew what they were doing.
Jokes aside, I don't know. I like the idea of doing things a little smaller. Like, Star Wars and Star Trek have a tendency, at least kind of I'd say Star Wars and the more recent Star Trek, to make things so big. Like the stakes are like all of living things in every corner of the universe are at stake here. The idea of kind of breaking things down and having like smaller stories, more personal, more about characters. I like the idea of that. It wasn't executed, in any sort of
successful way.
In successful way here. But the idea of that, I do like a lot. I like the idea breaking things down and just telling smaller stories in this universe.
Well, you know, there's often the idea that, you know, films are for big events and TV is where the little stuff can happen. And I do think that there's some truth to that. And there's been so much talk and so many promises, you know, pre-Disney's purchase of Lucasfilm, that there would be television series, live action series, that have never come to fruition in the Star Wars universe, that I do think that is a natural outcropping that we're starting to see, like with The Mandalorian. You know,
Yep.
There's definitely room for this. And one thing I'll say about things like The Mandalorian is they still are using pre-existent vibes and set pieces and things and deserts and things that Star Wars has already established. But Star Wars, I mean, every film in the original trilogy introduced new biomes, new characters, so things did grow in the success of that. And I think that there's room for that still. And I hope that it continues to grow. And I hope that Disney continues to expand upon it.
Exactly,
you know, after Solo didn't do as well as they'd hoped, you know, they essentially canned a lot of single character films, which is really where you can do a lot more of that narrow scope stuff more easily. And that's a shame to me because and we'll talk about this another day, but I think Solo.
I feel like, I think Solo falls, like, it was too big again. It was like it started out kind of like a small, like, love story, but then it just kept like escalating. It was just like, oh, okay, this thing's just like. And I mean,
I'm gonna go to bat for the big stuff in films. I don't necessarily want to pay $17 to go see a family drama in the Star Wars universe play out on screen. You know?
I mean, but there's like, it didn't have to then like correlate to like, oh, like one of the main characters is like, you know, doing secret missions for, you know, the Sith. You know, like, it just didn't need that. Like, you didn't need those tie-ins.
We never could have seen Chaucer go crazy alien and be killed.
I mean,
I'm just messing with you. No, I understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, it didn't need that. Like, it just could have been, you know, like a smaller contained thing its own thing.
And I sort of see that argument as well with Rogue One. I mean, people loud that film, and while there's I enjoyed watching it. The idea at the end where the spoiler alert, where all the characters die, was an unnecessary cop-out. It's like saying, here's a self-contained story, but only in the fact that we're going to kill everyone involved.
Yeah,
that's a forced error, because what happens is if you allow these characters to continue on, then all of a sudden it's a story about them. They did this thing. It's not a story about the thing, but you're insisting on tying it back to this overarching story. And I think you're right. I don't think it's necessary. And again, I think The Mandalorian is kind of starting to touch on that a little bit. They're playing with that. As much as we all hate the pandemic, because it's god awful horrible and it's cost so many lives and caused so much distress, it's just terrible. I do feel like it's given a lot of companies impetus to play with their streaming platforms and do things that are not something we ever would have thought would be done, like Disney putting out an episodic Star Wars live action show, or HBO and Warner Brothers recutting and reshooting and putting out a 4-hour version of Justice League. Like, these things would not have happened, I don't believe, otherwise, if they were not seeking content in new forms because of this. So, Mandy, what did you like about this movie?
That's a stinky face.
Yeah, those of you who have the Patreon can watch the video.
I'd say first,
something smells in here.
Probably me.
This film.
This film, all the Wookiee, like, unshampooed shag rugs.
I didn't see one bathtub or shower in that place.
Yeah. So first, I really liked that I had not ever seen this film before. Which is no longer true. Second, I feel like I possibly learned more about the target audience of the Star Wars franchise at that time. Specifically, that they were advertising a car that in today's dollars was worth like $16,000. So they had. So I was like, oh, I don't know, like a working man's.
Yeah, can we talk about
Or a working
inflation?
woman's
Those wagons were like
blue collar.
$4,000 in '78.
Yep.
I'm like,
So
"Whoa."
yeah, I looked up because I'm a nerd. I looked up the inflation. It'd be about $16,000. So it'd be like the low, like entry level Kia kind of car. It is. So yeah, definitely with all the union stuff, maybe the pantyhose is very like blue collar, I guess, the audience that they were expecting or marketing to, which I thought that was interesting because like
commercials, as you said, it really does
Yeah.
feel that way. And this was, I mean, this was a big prime time era. Like this was, you know,
Mhm.
the Charlie Brown Christmas, you know, it's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, like
Charlie
as you
Brown.
mentioned, there were not really any toy commercials until the very, very end. So like maybe like wasn't really kids. It was like
Yeah, it was a
more
weird.
traditional. So like I really like that. They got like a better idea because like having been born in like the early 80s, like I missed like having this be part of my adolescence, and like I acquired Star Wars like, you know, like as a
as we all did. I
second
think, right?
generation, like as all of
Yeah.
us did. Like we weren't there like when it first came out, so it was sort of like we picked it up later. It was really like fun to maybe learn a little bit about like what the demographic looked like for Star Wars, like at least for the Star Wars Christmas thing, and like kind of just feel a little bit more of that cultural aspects of it from that time period. And then I also really liked how they played with and explored maybe like the technology available to like everyday people. So like the different versions of it, like we currently now have all these different versions of touch screens, like in every various size and transportable version of it. And in this, they had all these different versions of like these 3D like VR type things.
That's true.
And that was like different flavors of it. I thought that was interesting. They explored that.
I think that's a good
There you
point. And I will say that I don't think we're going to do a who would you recommend this for to, because I think it's pretty clear. If you're a Star Wars fanatic, then you probably are the ones that are going to watch this film, because not only is it difficult to get through for someone who doesn't have interest in Star Wars lore, but it's also only available through bootlegs, or of course it's always up in some form on YouTube. Somebody's put it up and then it gets taken down and so on and so forth. But I highly recommend, if you are going to watch it, or if you want something in the background of your holiday party, get the riff tracks. Again, go to rifftracks.com. They are not paying us for this advertisement, though I would love it. Just go to rifftracks.com and pick up the Star Wars Holiday Special. It's funny. They're funny. Their writers are great. Mike and Bill and Kevin are great. It's just a good time. And it makes something that's pretty hard to tolerate because of the lack of a strong writing, very tolerable and actually very enjoyable. And personally, I sleep to it. It's great. I laugh and then I fall asleep, and I wake up and then I laugh again.
You heard it right here. It's a great sleep aid.
It's a great sleep aid. I mean, without it, I would just lose my mind without them making jokes, because it would just be bear sounds over and over and over again. But that's it.
Exhausting.
That is it. I think we've tagged it. I hope you guys have learned something new about the Star Wars Holiday Special, also where you can get it with some great comedy tracks. This is Nate Wyckoff for Cult and Classic Podcast. Thanks to the panel. As always, we're going to play out with All About Evil by The Chud. And I want to make sure everyone knows Cult and Classic Podcast has a Patreon at patreon.com/cultandclassicpodcast. You get pins, zines, awesome stuff, free videos. You can watch us. Check it out. Pay what you can. Help us keep this and expand this. And also, please review us on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and anywhere you want to leave a review, and subscribe. Thanks so much. Have a great holiday. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Cult and Classic Podcast. This podcast is important to me, but what's more important are the rights, privileges, and freedom from violence of everyone in this country and in this world. And that means supporting Black Lives Matter. If you'd like to make a donation, please go ahead and visit cultandclassicpodcast.com, where we have a list of places you can donate and help out. And please stay safe.